Chapter 31. The Intimate Friends. The first step Joseph took towards emancipating Inez's mind, he convinced her to divorce her abusive husband. He believed everything Inez told him about her spouse. Inez had never heard before that a Muslim wife could divorce her husband. She was taught from early age the power and ability to divorce was given by Islam to the man. He could just say to his wife verbally, "You are divorced." He didn't need a judge or witness to dissolve his marriage contract. He also didn't need to give any reason for divorcing his wife. But, the wife could divorce her husband only through the judge, and that if she had lawful reason to do so. Reasons such as desertion for years, being physically incapable of having sex with his wife, and being so poor that he could not buy clothes for her to cover her nakedness. Physical abuses such as beating and raping were not sufficient grounds for the wife to obtain divorce. Although Inez's husband was a gay and didn't sleep with her, still she could not prove it. As we have seen, her complaint was used against her and almost got her killed in the kingdom of Tartarus, where Satan has his seat and rules and controls the mind of each and every man. Anyway, when Inez accepted his wise advice, Joseph took her to the Bandera court and helped her to fill the necessary forms. The Indian court won't require the person to give reason for applying for divorce. Nevertheless, Inez gave many reasons for divorcing her spouse. She then gave the address of her husband in Riyadh. After a couple of weeks, the terribly abused Sudanese wife was a free girl again. The court issued 2 divorce certificates, one was given to Inez and the other one was mailed to her former husband. After getting her freed from the bondage of her evil former spouse, Joseph began to prepare her for the fight against her evil countrymen and women who masqueraded themselves as guardian angels of morality. Against those Muslim terrorists who disguised themselves as righteous police of Allah. Those evil Sudanese who claimed to be university students and wanted to obtain knowledge to enable them to enlighten others, when in reality they were full of darkness and ignorance. 7 weeks had passed by and not a single Sudanese student had seen the enlightened and awakened Inez and her handsome and wise lover sitting by the seashore and engrossed in heart-to-heart talk. By now, Inez had fallen in love with her new sage. She had never loved a mortal being like the way she was now loving her beautiful Joseph. Whenever she sat beside him, she felt awesome feeling that no human language could describe. Her heart would begin to beat and her soul would be filled with awe, an emotion variously combining dread, veneration, and wonder that was inspired by the sacred and sublime. There was an overwhelming feeling of reverence, an intensive admiration, which produced by his grand, sublime, and extremely beautiful form. She would feel as if she was not sitting beside a human, but a divine being. Everything he would say or do would get her excited and extremely overjoyed. When he was not with her, she missed him so much. One day she told him, "I wish you and me are living in a far-away planet in another galaxy that is not inhabited by anyone except us and us alone. Why can we not live together in this beautiful city of Bombay?" Inez was shocked when Joseph spoke those words. "How can we even think of this when we are neither lovers nor husband and wife? Inez, I want you to stop deceiving yourself. I want you to be true to your feelings and passions. I know you love me and you know that I love you too. How can you say we are not lovers? But you are a Christian and I am a Muslim. So, we are like 2 parallel lines that can never intersect. We are human beings before you are a Muslim girl and I am a Christian boy. Did you choose to be a Muslim when you were born, or did I choose which religion to follow when my mother gave birth to me?" "No," Inez responded, and before he could speak, she added, "But you are an Ethiopian boy and I am a Sudanese girl. Did we choose our places of birth? Joseph, let us just be good friends. As I told you from the beginning, I hate love. God is love. It means you hate God." "No, I don't hate God. Please don't say that again. Inez, you are very sweet girl. But unfortunately, you are very lonely girl and hated by those people who supposed to love you and protect you. Why don't you make your own decision and stop fearing people? I know you love me, but the fear of people is still crippling you. I promise you that I would never allow anybody to hurt you." Inez didn't know what to say or what to do. She needed at that moment someone other than herself to come out of her being and make her decision. She needed God, and she needed him so badly. But, wasn't it God who was the one who created those unfair laws which embodied in the Sharia that governed her life from childhood? From childhood, she was told that God created her deficient in religion and intellect. God put her under the despotic, dictatorial, tyrannical, and absolute authority of man. Man as her father, has to decide whom to marry and when to marry. Man as her husband, has to decide when she can go out, and without him she can't step out of his house, and he has to tell her what to eat and what to dress. Man has the divine right to beat her or rape her. It was man who sold her in marriage to another man who sold her to other men, and no one punished him for the evils he did to her. When she rebelled against the authority of her father, he made an attempt on her life. And when she ran away from her abusive husband, the law punished her instead of him. While Inez was deeply engrossed in her sad and dark past life, she felt the hands of Joseph surrounded her and slowly drew her to his chest. She responded and hugged him so tightly as if she scared he might suddenly disappear and leave her all alone in that sea of gross hatred of her people. Joseph lifted her face and looked into her eyes. Her eyes were full of beauty and intoxicated with the wine of love. Her lips were thirsty for his kiss. He knew he had starved them for a long time, and it was time to feed them from the fountain of his deep love. His lips touched her lips and began to kiss them. She responded to his tender kiss and allowed her tongue to slide between his lips. Then the two intimate friends went into a rapture of pleasure and joy. Chapter 32. She called a spade a spade. 2 months went by and no one among her people had discovered her new abominable deed. By now, the beautiful Inez and her handsome Joseph's love reached its peak. Now the lovers began to talk about taking the final step in their union. It was Joseph who came up with the idea of getting married and living together as husband and wife. Inez strongly contested his proposal. She told him time and again that they were unmarriageable lovers. Joseph repeatedly said to his beloved Inez, there was no such thing called unmarriageable lovers. He said to her, we are living in a time even male lovers and female lovers are allowed to get married to each other. He then challenged her to show him the word, unmarriageable, in any English dictionary. Joseph demanded to know, in which book in the entire world, it was written that, 2 adult and mentally sound lovers were not eligible or suitable for marriage. She said she could show in her holy Quran that a Muslim woman was not allowed to marry a non-Muslim man. So, Joseph understood his next task was to free his beloved from the shackles of her misogynistic religion, which was the cause of all her suffering, abuses, and persecutions. Joseph decided to achieve that difficult goal through 2 ways. He understood that, a girl who was born and brought up in such a strict religious society as Sudan would not give up her faith unless she would find a better one. Wherefore, he decided to empty her religious mind by degrees and likewise refill it bit by bit. In plain words, he wanted to replace gradually Islam by Christianity. Joseph was aware of the sensitivity of religious arguments. He knew everybody believed that his religion was the only true religion and other faiths were false religions. At first, he focused on her past life. He wanted to assist her to discover by herself the driving force behind her abuses and persecutions. Before that time, Inez, like any other abused Muslim woman, was putting the blame on her people. She used to believe that Islam was a peaceful religion and placed the woman in the best possible social status. It was the Islamic terrorist groups and the fanatic Muslim scholars who hijacked the peaceful gospel of the Prophet Muhammad and misinterpreted the loving teachings of his hadiths and the Holy Quran. No matter how many times he tried, Joseph could not succeed in convincing Inez that the blame shouldn't be directed only towards her abusers and persecutors, but also towards what made them to be what they were. Then Joseph abandoned his former method and adopted a new one. He simply began to tell her about the teachings of Jesus Christ. Instead of resisting and refusing to hear him, Joseph found in his beloved attentive ears to hear. Inaz was thrilled to hear the words of Jesus which he spoke on the Sermon on the Mountain. In short time, her soul was deeply immersed in the peaceful gospel of Christ. She said to her lover that she had never heard those loving and peaceful teachings of Jesus before. She wondered as why in her Muslim society no one was taught her those doctrines. She believed that Muslim children should be taught those peaceful and loving teachings. Each and every Muslim should be taught, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you, and persecute you. Likewise, Muslims should be told marriage must be between one man and one woman, and not between one male and 4 females. And also, marriage had to be between 2 grown-up adults, and not one grown-up man and underage female child. Here Inaz put her finger on her holy prophet. She was taught in school that her prophet Muhammad was 54 years old when married his child bride Aisha at the age of 6 and had sexual intercourse with her when she became 9. At that time, she didn't see it as a child abuse and rape. But now, she was made to see it as a terrible abuse of an innocent child. Inaz began to see how sinful and evil her prophet was. Joseph was shocked when his beloved boldly called her prophet a child abuser and rapist. Emboldened by her daring words, her lover began to tell her in plain language how evil Islam was. He told her how Islam was forced by the sword on the pagan Arabs of the Arabian Peninsula. How many atrocities the early Mujahideen committed against those people who used to follow different religions. In the name of holy war or jihad, they invaded many countries, murdered thousands of non-Muslims, raped their women as war captives, enslaved their children and sold them as slaves, robbed their wealth and properties, and occupied their lands. Although Inaz was taught all those atrocities at the school, but at that time she was made to believe those were just wars which commanded by Allah. However, today she was made to call a spade a spade. She was made to call evil by its proper name. Before that time, she used to call evil good, rape of a female child halal marriage, raping of female captives as permissible act, and committing adultery with 4 women at the same time as right deed granted by God to his favorite creature, the man. Finally, Inaz began to call a spade by none any other name than a spade. Now her mind was freed from the evil teachings of Muhammad and was filled by the peaceful teachings of Christ. Eventually, the handsome Joseph took the final step and invited his freed beloved to forsake Islam and embraced Christianity. He knew in his heart that Inaz had already forsaken Islam and converted to his faith in her heart. Therefore, she didn't argue and resisted when he asked her to do so. He was the one who led her to Christ. So, the good Joseph wasn't only cared about the physical welfare of his beloved, but he cared about her soul too. After her conversion, he invited her to join him in his church. Inaz accepted the invitation and went with her lover and spiritual friend to a Sunday service in a Bandra church. And it was in the church that Inaz the so-called abominable deed was leaked out and reached the ears of the Sudanese Muslim students. A Christian Sudanese girl by the name of Mary Akal had a Sudanese Muslim conjugal partner, called Khalid al-Ajabo. That adulterous Mary saw the newly converted Inaz and her beautiful lover Joseph in the church and broke the unbelievable news to her adulterous partner Khalid. When that Khalid came running to the international students' hostel and dropped the bomb, the Sudanese Muslim students turned the peaceful city of Bombay into a war zone. Chapter 33. The Cowardly Attack. The first one who was attacked and badly battered was the beautiful Joseph, who dared to take a Sudanese Muslim girl to a church. When questioned by the righteous police of Allah, the brave Joseph didn't only admit that he took the infamous Sudanese girl to his church, but confessed his love with her and that the two were already engaged and very soon they were going to get married. He also informed those student terrorists that his beloved and fiancée Inaz had forsaken Islam and embraced Christianity. On hearing the last incredible news, the so-called lions of jihad flew in a religious frenzy and became extremely mad. At that critical moment, they had forgotten that they were in the cafeteria and viciously attacked Joseph. They were 5 bearded students. A Kenyan student reacted quickly and dialed the number of the anti-terrorist department at the Bombay CID. That police number was displayed in every place of the 14th-floor building of the International Students' Hostel. Fortunately, the anti-terrorist police reached in time and snatched the life of the beautiful Joseph from the jaws of those ravenous jungle beasts. All 5 voracious lions of jihad were subdued with big batons and then tied together with ropes and dragged like wild beasts and taken away. The beautiful Joseph was taken half dead by an ambulance to the Breach Candy Hospital. The news of the abominable conversion of Inaz spread like fire all over Bombay and travelled with the speed of light to other Indian cities. The Grand Emir of the Sudanese Muslim Brothers and Sisters at Bombay University summoned his top leaders and conducted a quick emergency meeting. The meeting had one single agenda: what should we do to nip the problem in the bud? Since the problem became a police case, killing the apostate girl wouldn't be a wise thing to do. The Emir suggested to inform the girl's father in Sudan and also contact the diplomats at the Sudanese embassy and request them to take an immediate action. He also decided to call for an emergency general meeting of the members of the Sudanese Students' Association. Lastly, he proposed to send 4 of the jihad lionesses to the despicable Sudanese girl and talk to her, and if chance permit they should carry an Islamic washba against her. When those female terrorists went to Inaz, she was living in the hostel of St. Xavier's College at Church Gate. The college allowed some female foreign students to occupy some quarters of its hostel. Her dormitory was containing a number of semi-private rooms for residents, along with common bathroom facilities and recreation areas. Luckily, Inaz happened to be in a crowded section where there were many girls. So, those female police of Allah had a brief talk with her. Inaz confirmed the words of her lover and also didn't deny her conversion. The 4 lionesses of jihad declared her an infidel apostate and told her upon her return to Sudan she would be put to death, either through stoning or hanging. After uttering their life threat, the righteous police of Muhammad marched out of the hostel and left without harming the apostate girl. Inaz had no knowledge of the cowardly terrorist attack on her lover. Again, it was Mary Akal who informed her about the vicious attack upon her lover. That Mary was acting as a double agent. She was living with Inaz in the same dormitory. However, she was rarely slept in her dorm. She was spending most of her nights in the bed of her Sudanese Muslim sex partner at Kalina. Her conjugal partner wasn't a religious person like her. He drank alcohol, smoked marijuana, and very often went to Grand Road to spend a good time with a hooker. In fact, he considered Mary a free-of-charge prostitute or his sex slave. He often spoke on her back and told his friends he would never marry such an ugly black slave. Inaz at once rushed out of the hostel and waved a taxi and told its driver to speed up and take her to the Breach Candy Hospital. Fortunately, that day, her beautiful Joseph was beaten up by hands and not rods or swords. Some of those police of Allah were having deadly white weapons in their apartments. Whenever they went for religious washba, they would carry with them whips and knives. They would conceal those tools of torture beneath their Islamic pajamas and turbans. Inaz cried so much after seeing how her lover was hammered by those demons of Allah. While she was crying, she was kneeling on her knees beside his bed. Through sobbing, she offered prayers and supplications to God. She petitioned her Lord to save the life of her lover Joseph. Inaz was not agreeing with her lover when he invited her to come to church. She told him they shouldn't rush things. She suggested that, first she should seek a refugee asylum in India. Her reason for seeking refugee asylum, because as a Muslim converted to Christianity, she would be executed as an apostate if she returned to Sudan. If she became a refugee in India, then she could apply for resettlement in a Western country. Then and only then she could go to church and marry her Ethiopian Christian lover. Nonetheless, Joseph told her, the refugee asylum was called political asylum. It would be granted only to the politically persecuted citizens or displaced people like southern Sudanese. He then assured her that, the good Lord would protect her from any danger. Chapter 34. The Second Attack. Joseph spent a week before he was discharged from the hospital. Meanwhile, an Indian Christian family invited Inez to come and stay with them. The family knew Inez's life was in danger, and therefore, convinced her to leave the college dormitory and come and hide in their residence. Those kind Christians were originally from the south of India. They took that step, without consulting or taking permission from the church leadership. Joseph also was advised by the same family not to return to that den of Muslim terrorists. Following their advice, he rented an apartment in Bandra area. Inez often frequented her visits to the apartment of her lover. It was she who insisted that they should get married as soon as possible. Joseph became extremely happy when his beloved at last acquiesced to his proposal. Their marriage took place shortly after Inez gave her approval of the bold step. They went to the Bandra court, along with 3 witnesses from the church, and had court marriage. On the same evening, the church leadership with the help of the good Christian family conducted their Christian marriage. Their religious wedding was celebrated in a beautiful hall. The good Christians treated Inez as their own daughter and spent generously and abundantly in her wedding party. They were quite wealthy family. After their marriage, the lovers traveled to Goa and spent their honeymoon in the golden sandy beaches of that tourist city. One need to write a good-sized book to describe the wonderful time the newly married lovers spent in that beautiful Indian city. It suffices to say that Inez had enjoyed her second honeymoon million times better than the couple of weeks she had spent with her unmatchable lover Tariq in the same city. After their return, Inez left the care and protection of the kind Christian family and began to live with her husband in his apartment at Bandra. The son of that family was a very wealthy man. He had tours and travels agency. He had many politician friends. Moreover, he knew many top officials in the police enforcement. The head of the Bombay CID, Criminal Investigation Department, was his close friend. He travelled many times to the Middle East. That is why he understood the fanatic mentality of the Muslims. So, when he heard about Inez's conversion, he anticipated a violent reaction from her Muslim family and countrymen and women in India. He approached Inez and her boyfriend and the church and gave them his personal cell phone number and told them to contact him any time of the day, if anyone tried to harm them. Therefore, when Joseph was attacked by those terrorist students, he invited Inez to come and stay in his residence at Kalina area. He also contacted his friend at the Bombay CID and informed him why the Ethiopian foreign student was attacked by those 5 Sudanese Muslim students. His friend told him, those 5 Sudanese Muslim terrorists who hid themselves behind the name of foreign students would be severely punished by the law, and after that they would be deported to Sudan and their names would be blacklisted. Meanwhile, the newly wedded couple, Inez and Joseph, returned to their medical college and resumed their study. They avoided to go to any place where those Sudanese students could meet them. They never separated from each other even for a short time. They didn't inform anyone where they were living. The building they were living in had a security guards around the clock. No outsider could enter the building without obtaining a permission from one of the tenants. So, Joseph and Inez were well protected inside their apartment. Their fears would arise in their hearts as soon as they stepped outside the building. They scared that some of those angry Sudanese students might attack them in broad daylight and harm them. Joseph's body was still retaining the marks of the beatings by those savages. Nevertheless, he always kept encouraging his wife Inez and assuring her that he would never allow any Sudanese boy to touch her. He said to her time and again that they could reach her only over his dead body. Joseph assured Inez he wouldn't allow even her father to touch her. Nevertheless, the second attack on them came from the last group of people they could ever have anticipated to attack them. Yes, from the anti-terrorist department of the Bombay CID. It was 8:30 p.m., when their apartment was raided by 10 police officers, 6 males and 4 females. The lovers were slapped, kicked by heavy boots, tied with long ropes, and taken under custody in an undignified manner. The tenants and other bystanders were told by the police the two African students were arrested because they were involved in drugs trafficking between Bombay and Pune. Chapter 35. The Plot. The plot to kidnap the apostate Sudanese girl Inaz Ahmed Salah and fly her back to Sudan on the same night was hatched inside the Sudanese embassy at New Delhi. It was planned and executed by the same people who supposed to ensure her safety while she was living abroad. In order to carry out that wicked plot, the embassy sent two of its legal representatives. Those lawbreakers arrived in Bombay under full secrecy. No one among the 1,400 Sudanese students knew about them except the Grand Emir of the Muslim Brotherhood. In actual fact, he was the one who flew to the capital of India and reported Inaz's abominable act to the ambassador personally. Mr. Ambassador himself was an active member of that dreadful Muslim Brotherhood terrorist group. Actually, even the current president of Sudan was the key ringleader of that evil group. Let us say a word or two about the president of Sudan. The leader of that notorious terrorist group, of the Muslim Brothers and Sisters, Omar al-Bashir, is now and has been the president of Sudan for 29 years. Given the circumstances, he might as well be the president for life. He was indicted by the International Criminal Court, ICC, at Hague for crimes against humanity, war crimes, and genocide. An arrest warrant for President Omar al-Bashir was issued on March 4, 2009 by the ICC indicting him on 5 accounts of crimes against humanity, murder, extermination, forcible transfer, torture, and rape, and 2 accounts of war crimes, pillaging and intentionally directing attacks against civilians. A second arrest warrant for President al-Bashir was later issued on July 12, 2010 by ICC adding 3 counts of genocide for the ethnic cleansing of the Fur, Masalit and Zaghawa tribes of the Darfur region of western Sudan. Until today, January 25, 2019, the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood and President of Sudan, Omar al-Bashir remains at large, wanted by the International Criminal Court. So, that wicked emir returned from his secret trip to New Delhi with those terror-inspiring 2 Sudanese diplomats. They stayed in an expensive hotel in Kolayba area. By the way, Kolayba was called the paradise of the Arabs. Arabs come in thousands every year to feast on the bodies of the Indian prostitutes. For them, Indian prostitutes are the cheapest hookers in the world. In Kolayba, sometimes, you can see an Arab man with as many as 6 Indian prostitutes in a hotel room. Many times whenever the Bombay police decide to crack down on prostitution, the front page of the newspapers would feature a story of an Arab man caught with half a dozen prostitutes in his hotel room. So, those Sudanese diplomats, besides the execution of their evil plot, they wanted to indulge themselves in that cheap sex. Through the grand terrorist student they were connected to some corrupt Muslim police officers working in the anti-terrorist department. Through bribery those lawless officers agreed to carry out the plot of kidnapping the apostate Muslim girl. In addition to them, through the same illegal means, the 2 Sudanese diplomats found other Muslim officers employed in the Narcotics Enforcement Department of the Bombay CID. The first step on that evil plot was to locate the hiding place of the disgraceful Sudanese girl. Every Sudanese student in Bombay knew in which medical college the infamous Inaz was studying. So, 2 of those Muslim police officers in civilian clothes went with the emir and hid themselves near Inaz College. After that, it was a child play to discover her hiding place. The wicked emir pointed his finger from a safe distance and identified the apostate Sudanese girl and her uncircumcised infidel dog. Although she could not hear him, the emir called the ignominious Sudanese girl every filthy word he knew, when he saw her walking hand in hand with her infidel Ethiopian husband. After Inaz's hiding place was known, the 2 diplomats booked her air ticket via a direct flight from Bombay to Khartoum. Her flight was scheduled for 11:30 p.m. They brought with them an emergency traveling document, bearing the name of Inaz Ahmed Salah. It was issued by the Sudanese embassy. The final step in that carefully planned plot was to send some police officers to the apartment of Inaz and Joseph and arrest them under the serious charges of involvement in drugs trafficking activities between Goa and Bombay. Joseph was to be sent to the Arthur Road jail while Inaz was to be transferred by the same police officers to Bombay International Airport and on the same night shipped back to Sudan. Upon her arrival on Khartoum she would be arrested and sent to one of the ghost houses. The current notorious Muslim Brotherhood government was the first Sudanese regime to introduce the Bi'awat al-Ashba, the ghosts' houses. Anyone entering a ghost house would meet two fates. He would either be tortured to death or emerge a madman. If he managed to survive his interrogation, he would be locked up indefinitely without trial or right of visitation by his family. He would be cast into a deep dark dungeon and he would never ever see the sunlight again. His dungeon would be his toilet and his grave. A Sudanese girl would prefer a life of prostitution or death by starvation on the streets, rather than a stint at the ghost house. If a virgin girl somehow managed to survive the torture and rape inside those stinking slaughter chambers, she would come out with a baby. A daughter of a well-known family entered those concentration camps as a virgin and came out with 2 babies. The evil plot worked perfectly well. Inaz's passport was found in her apartment and taken by the police. She was forcibly transferred in an marked police car to the international airport. It wasn't a rare occurrence at the international airport every now and then to see a foreign student being dragged by the Bombay police and chained to his seat and sent back to his country of origin. So, even if Inaz resisted, screamed, and told other police officers and passengers that she had been kidnapped from her apartment and they were taking her to her country against her wish, she wouldn't find anyone to free her from those evil police officers. Also, if she told her problem and what would happen to her in Sudan, no one would come for her rescue. Inaz knew and understood that she had fallen victim to a well-planned wicked plot. Accordingly, she gave her fruitless efforts and surrendered her fate to her Maker. She said a silent prayer while her tears were fallen on her cheeks like hot acid. It is said that only when man loses all hope in life that the divine rescue would come. That was exactly what happened in those critical moments. After Inaz gave all hope, then God sent his rescuing angel. It so happened that the influential son of that good Christian family was flying to Muscat City, the capital of Oman, at the same time in another plane. His name was Vijay and his wife's name was Mary. It was Mary who spotted Inaz surrounded by some police officers. By the way, the Emir and those 2 evil Sudanese diplomats came to the Bombay International Airport. The wicked Emir talked to Inaz and cursed her unceasingly. He even took many photos of her with those lawless Muslim police officers. He wanted to show those pictures to his terrorists on the following day. Mary immediately informed her husband about her unpleasant discovery. Vijay at once cancelled his trip and contacted the head of the CID. He informed him the apostate Sudanese Muslim girl was placed under arrest by some police officers and most probably they were sending her to Sudan against her wish.